Okay.
क्या प्रोफेसर जगदीश जी
कैसे हैं? How are you?
बिल्कुल ठीक IIT दिल्ली
I know, I remember. Yes.
Yes.
So we will start.
Yes.
Okay, welcome everyone. Jai Jinendra, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Jai Jinendra, everyone. Welcome to this special session of Jainin. Very excited to be here. Special for a few reasons. First, we just completed 125 sessions of Jainin. Which is a record. I know we as a group, we all are very busy professionals. So it's a record to continue the momentum. So that's one thing. And session is also very special for the topic, which is actually core of Jainin, why it was formed. And also for our speaker, Jagdish sir. So I will get to his introduction. The way we will follow is after the initial introduction, about a couple of minutes about Jainin, also about Dr. Jagdish Sheth. We will have him speak about 25 minutes or so, and then we will follow it up by a Q&A. We will try to make it about 75 minutes or so. Please, meanwhile, keep putting your questions on the chat, and we will take it up in the Q&A through chat. Neeraj Bhaiya, Vipulji will keep a track of it, or also we will also keep it live as well towards the end. In the meanwhile, I suggest everyone to keep yourself on mute. We will keep the session in English primarily. We will touch upon in Hindi as well, but feel free to ask questions in whichever language you're comfortable, and we will just take it from there. So again, welcome. And with that, Neeraj Bhaiya, if you can just play the Mangalacharan.
Yes, sure.
Jai Jain and welcome everyone back. To give you a quick introduction, my name is Vishal Jain. I live in Gurgaon. I work in Accenture as managing director, and beyond work, my interest is in the space of what I call spiritual intelligence and trying to link to the practical world, professional and personal. And I think Jainin has been a big catalyst in my journey of really discovering myself and going through the dilemma and going through the experiences of like-minded people. So it's a journey, it's an evolution, and I'm a learner. So happy to be here. And thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I'll just, in the initial few minutes, share something about Jainin, what we are. We'll keep it very brief, and then pass it on to Dr. Sheth, who we are delighted to have here. Let me share my screen. I hope, Neeraj Bhaiya, we are able to see the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming.
Excellent. So, okay, excellent. So special meet, as I said, and the topic is very relevant. Just to share with you what is Jainin. Jainin we formed about 6 years back, and pretty much the objective was that practical application of Jain for the modern world. Pretty much we all felt as a group of professionals that there's a lot of focus on what. So first of all, we need to deepen our knowledge about the Jain principles, and we need to really preserve our heritage, rich heritage. But also we need to make it, we need to propagate it, and we need to also make it real and practical in a day-to-day life. So the way we have LinkedIn, we thought of Jainin as Jainism Insights for the Modern World. And this session in particular is very relevant to that topic. The group primarily has professionals and entrepreneurs, and now also has students and homemakers. We started in Gurgaon to begin with, but now it's a very global order, and that's perfect and fantastic for us to have people across the world joining us. So 6 years, 125 sessions, 600 members. So that has been the journey. Sessions we have done on, let's say, going deep into the literature like Bara Bhavna, ya fir Solar Current Bhavna, or Theory of Karma, or Life as a Jain Youth, or also about meditation. How do you live a global professional life in a Jain context? So we have done those kind of sessions over the last 6 years or so. How you can join by clicking on this let's say QR code, or otherwise you can reach out to some of the members' name which was in the brochure. How you can contribute is by participating in the group. Today we have mainly WhatsApp group. Frankly, it is not a formal registered organization. We have all been very, very busy, but we also thought consciously to keep it very informal and fluid rather than going into the lot of structure, but I guess we will get there some point. So you can participate in the group, you can participate in the session. You can also invite like-minded other people who would benefit from these sessions. And if you feel you have relevant, let's say, experience you would like to share with others, please sign up as speakers. The way it has worked very well for us is that some of the members, like anyone can really pick it up a topic and they learn and then they impart. And as we say, the best way to learn and really understand very well is by training and by imparting your knowledge to others. So that has been our mantra so far. We have some upcoming sessions. So we broadly have 2 tracks. One is to deepen our knowledge, which is where we have a Jainin knowledge series. So we just concluded our Das Lakshan series, and we intend to now pick up Meri Bhavna series. And there we have a benefit of fantastic speakers. Plus also we have mentors like Kamal Jaswal uncle, who must be in the call as well. He is a retired IAS officer and very learned person. Yogendra uncle, very very learned senior mentors we have who are keeping us track on the technical aspect of the core dharma and the principles. And the other track is around applying Jain principles in day-to-day life, and which is where this session fits in very well, and which is where we also have 2 upcoming sessions. So I think in October, we intend to have tentatively on 15th of October, Amit Jain. He is CEO of L'Oreal India. He will talk about his successful professional. It is not in conflict with Jain values. Sometimes we get into that dilemma. So why it is not in conflict, and he's going to share his own journey and lessons from his journey. And then in our following session, end of October, we will have Rajneesh Jain, who is CFO of Reliance Jio. Reliance Jio, as you know, is one of the biggest companies in the world. And he's going to share his practical experience of living with principles in day-to-day professional life. So these are the 2 upcoming sessions. Our intention is to this track, keeping it very relevant, practical. So the ask is, if you have any questions that, okay, theory aside, how I do it. So please feel free to really put them in the sessions before that in the group, and that's how we'll take it forward. Just to share with you who are the people behind it, some of the names, these are all volunteers. Swati, Piyush, Prashant Bhaiya, Vipul, Neeraj ji, myself, Naresh, Shefali, Naveen ji, and Rajiv ji. So I think these are the people who have been part of it, sparing their time. Coming to the poll, coming to this session was around rediscovering Jainism for the contemporary world, and we held 5 polls. And thank you, Vipul ji, for conducting those polls. And what came out was that, hey, we all felt, the group members felt that the Jain principles have really helped us quite a bit in the truthfulness followed by non-attachment. So that was very interesting, that while being in non-attached, how can you be successful, right? Sometimes one may feel that I want to do more, but how that has really helped. So that was the group members' feeling. Number 2, they all felt that for this better living environment on earth, the principles of ahimsa followed by anekantvad is very, very relevant. And I'm sure Jagdish sir is going to touch upon that in today's talk. 90% professionals felt that it is not a conflict when we talk about spirituality and success, which is very interesting because while it is 90%, but I think on a day-to-day life, we do believe, believe that we do go through those dilemmas and choice, right? And that's where I think reinforcing that point that they are not in conflict, they are companion is very critical for all of us. And the last one, people felt that our ahimsa and the tolerance are the key things where Jain principles can really contribute to the world. Some of the questions which people talked about that, hey, what they will learn, they would like to hear from the session today. So I think Dr. Sheth is going to be touching upon, I'm sure. Okay. So with that, let me go to introduce Dr. Jagdish Sheth. And it's a privilege and an honor, sir, to have you here and introduce you to the Jainin community and all of you. Dr. Jagdish N is a professor of business, Charles H. Kellstadt Professor of Business at Emory University in the USA. And he is known globally for his scholarly contribution in the field of consumer behavior, international relation, marketing, and competitive strategy. 350 books and research papers written. I think he is known to be predicting the trends early on. So I'm sure whenever he says and shares his wisdom, is going to be very relevant for all of us. He has got 50 years of combined research and teaching experience across University of Southern California, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Columbia University, and now at Emory University. And he is recipient of 2020 Padma Bhushan Award, which all of us know is one of the highest civilian awards in the country. He has been on board of several companies. He has been an advisor to several multinational corporations. He has been an advisor to government of Singapore. He has been an advisor to government of the USA for telecom industry. So I think the list is on and on and on. And very delighted to have you here, sir. And I think also I want to touch upon his contribution to really further the the Jainism principles and understanding in the USA. I had a fortune of visiting Jain Society of Greater Atlanta last year, and that temple and the entire thing, I think a lot of contribution came from Dr. Sheth. He's also contributing quite a bit to really have a Jain principles in the literature and the curriculum. And in fact, it's very personal to me and my wife that our son, who is studying at Emory University second year, as part of his undergrad curriculum, he is studying a subject on Jainism, and a proper for 6 months with 4 credits. He has to go through that, and that's a perfect way to really learn. And he commented that he and other 23 students, Jain and non-Jains, they found it very, very interesting and very logical and scientific and practical. And I felt, wow, that we have been on the path of Pathshalas all along, but I think this was a very different way that he commented and acted on. Right. So with that, I will just hand over to Dr. Sheth for to really share his wisdom with us, and welcome from all of us, sir. And over to you.
Thank you, Vishal, for a very nice introduction. I'm happy to be with this group, partly because I'm a firm believer in basic day-to-day living and its usefulness from the principles of Jainism. I was born in Burma, became a refugee before World War II, born to a Jain family. My father was almost Gandhian in his principles, and everything he believed very strongly in Jainism, and he inculcated that values in us. We became refugees, very tough life after coming back to India in 1941. And I just turned 85, by the way. But today's 85 is a new 65. And today's 65 is a new 45. And today's 45 is midlife crisis, which is exactly one of the key things we'll talk about, how to avoid midlife crisis using Jainism principles in our personal life. And as Vishal mentioned, there is no contradiction whatsoever between spirituality, tenets of Jainism, and a professional career. We are all living examples of that. I came to America in 1961 as a foreign graduate student, and I promised my family I will remain a vegetarian. At that time, it was very hard. First of all, everybody wants to put pressure to behave like Americans, whether those are your classmates or not. I have all kinds of interesting stories I can go on. I'll take one anecdote and get into the presentation. A major celebration in America is called Thanksgiving. It's a very unique concept. Thanking, in fact, the natives when the pilgrims arrived and in Mayfair about giving them the corn, hospitality, etc. And the Thanksgiving is becoming just like a Valentine's Day, just like Mother's Day is becoming international because of the fundamental tenet of gratitude, showing gratitude of what somebody helped you. So I went to an American family as a guest of the family, and they did not know I'm a vegetarian. And now there was a dilemma. What do I feed with this person? Of course, there's a bread, there's a cranberry juice. They said, okay, what we can do is that in the turkey itself, that puts some stuffing, which is vegetarian. They said, you can eat the stuffing. Isn't that interesting? I said, of course, I cannot eat the stuffing. I still remember those dialogues. But I think the principles of having strong belief systems anchors you in life. And I'll talk about three major areas where Jainism is becoming what I would call the most contemporary ancient religion. And I've done presentations in this area in many of the places, but today I'll focus on three major crises we are experiencing. Some are personal, some are more societal crises, etc. So let's go through the presentation. So please open up the slides, Vishal, if you can, or Neeraj, whoever is managing.
I will. You can see the slide, sir?
Yeah, I can see the slide. So the title is Rediscovering Jainism. Jainism, of course, has been ancient religion. It is being rediscovered, especially for the contemporary life. I don't know whether the audience knows, but now we have more than 20 universities who have Jainism chairs and now professorships, mostly non-Indians, surprisingly. It is the religion that is being taught in the doctoral programs at top departments of religion, such as University of Chicago, Yale University, just goes on and on. And it's just gratifying to see how much people are finding meaning in our religion, which we took it for granted. So this is making us more conscious about what we may be doing unconsciously even. So the title is Rediscovering Jainism for the Contemporary World. My colleague, Dr. Sulak Jain, for example, often had mentioned that Jainism in any academic literature is a footnote religion. Somebody will and say, if you wanted to know more. So let's go to the next slide, please. So Jainism is the most contemporary ancient religion. Tenets of Jainism, such as ahimsa, aparigraha, and anekantavad, are based on, surprisingly, this very scientific, which is what I found fascinating more as a scholar, academician. We look at a scientific evidence, but it's based upon both clinical as well as scientific understanding of three disciplines. Ecology on the one hand, sociology, which is institutions and how they behave with each other, and psychology, which is a personal journey. The key concept of Jainism is mindfulness. All it does is make us conscious about what we say, what we do, what we behave. So mindfulness is a fundamental concept, and we are not mindful quite often. And I'll give you an example. As a vegetarian, of course, we eat lots of vegetables, fruits. All the waste, we used to put it in the garbage disposal in America. Till about 10 years ago, my wife and I figured out why not put it in the backyard. So we began to have every day all the waste of the vegetable fruits, we put it in the backyard. Within 24 to 48 hours, it's taken away completely by birds, by animals, by insects. We have no idea. you learn quite a lot that nature is the best waste manager. It is not humans who can teach nature or shape nature, but nature can shape human beings. Learning from nature is very important. And that's what Jainism says. Just be conscious of what you do, how you impact positively, negatively on society, but also conscious about how somebody else can teach you. There's a very good Asian saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will show up. I love that saying. It's the student who has to be ready to learn. Teachers are everywhere. Teachers can be your teachers, gurus. We had a Teachers' Day last week, for example. Teachers can be mountains. Teachers can be peers. Nature may be the best teacher. And it basically, the fundamental concept of Jainism is really not compassion as we think, but it is mindfulness. It means conscious, just being conscious, awareness about what's happening around us, caring, consciously caring for other human beings, other lives in general, and temperance, everything doing in moderation. It is the moderation concept that was taken over by Buddhism eventually as a core concept, but really ultimately turns out to be back to mindfulness is a very key one, because we do things out of habit and we don't even know what we are doing or what the consequences are of what we do on ourselves, on environment, and on society at large. And I think that's a daily practical realization, just knowing what we are doing. Next slide, please. So what are the three contemporary issues? I'm doing a lot of research in this area and I'm finding principles of Jainism helping me conceptualize very well. The biggest crisis is sustainability and ecology. You can see today earthquake in Morocco that took place, for example. There is a flooding going on all over the world, whether it's in China or whether it is in India, for example. We are having massive heat wave. European Union and England are suffering from a massive heat. Ecology is imbalanced. But it's not a phenomenon for generations or thousands of years. It is a more recent phenomenon. And that happened because as human beings in the Industrial Revolution, we had some wrong theories. The theory was that all the industrial raw materials like copper, iron is inorganic. Nature is organic by definition. Doesn't matter whether it takes thousands of years to produce coal or iron or whatever the mineral is. And we overexploited it with a belief system that humans are the most superior living organism. Jainism fundamental principle is that all souls are equal, whether those are in vegetation, those are in animals, those are in marine life, as I will talk about. So there are three principles that in industrialization we did which are wrong. By going for economies of scale, we overproduced, which means now we have to store. The fundamental divorce we created between production and consumption is a reason why we have so much of climate change problem. Because now we have to store the product, you have to ship it out, that all puts carbon footprint. The biggest carbon footprint, surprisingly, is happening not in the factory as we think, because those are the visible symbols about pollution, etc., but it is at home. 80 to 75% of all of the carbon footprint is created by having things at home like refrigeration, for example. Most of the homes built, at least in Western world, are made from chemical processed materials. And also, next most place is the supermarkets. 24/7, there are freezers running constantly, refrigeration-wise, and that's creating the carbon footprint. Surprisingly, it is now being recognized more and more that the intervention has to happen at the individual level, at the household level, not just at the factory level through public policy. And of course, the industrialization of China, which took place in the last 30 years, industrialization of India that is taking place, we call it modernization. But the biggest continent available, about 1 billion people, is Africa, that is just about to industrialize itself, which means Mother Nature cannot regenerate enough to support so much population, especially living in the more modern way. There is a huge ecological cost of convenience. Everything, we made it convenient, but it is having enormous damage to the environment. We are just not conscious about our activities. So that's clearly one major area, and I'll show you how principles of Jainism helps about sustainability, which every student today is taught to learn, every student is aware. In fact, many of the young professionals like the Z generation are asking corporations, what are you doing for sustainability? Are you contributing toward the climate change and carbon footprint, or are you actually solving the problem is a very key. For a talented person is not saying what is my career, what's my salary, but what are you doing from a CSR viewpoint, corporate social responsibility, all over the world, surprisingly. So we are finding that as a part of our daily living as corporate leadership itself, we have to understand that we are making impact on the society, not just on ourselves, but also on the ecology. So cost of convenience is what I'm calculating right now. We have made it everything very convenient, which is very good for us. Our life is much easier compared to the agricultural age, for example, but we are paying a price. So how do you reverse carbon footprint? How do you reverse climate change? Surprisingly, it's possible if you use Jainism principles, which I'll show you a little later on. Second major is a very key area. We right now have in front of our eyes what I would call a disintegration of social governance or societal governance. We are believing so strongly on individuality and the individual freedom. All of our young grandchildren, for me, grandchildren and great-grandchildren at my age, feel like I am the center of attention. I have no obligation to parents. I have no obligations to society at large. I need to satisfy my own needs. Our religion is totally contrary. Most Asian religions believe institutions are equally important as individuals. So balancing the two will be very important. So for example, family and the family as a unit, we are today living like roommates. I have a whole chapter in a new book I'm writing called The Roommate Nation. Nobody wants to eat together. There is no time. We barely get together, and eating like a chore rather than an enjoyable learning from one generation to the other or conversations, and everybody rushes into their own corner or a room. Somebody is watching YouTube, somebody is doing WhatsApp, somebody watching television, somebody's talking on the phone. We live like roommates. So what happens to the unit of family as a societal institution? Same thing is happening with faith, which is why we have sessions like this one to say, how can we bond back using technology or preferably in congregation? Before the industrialization, where we taught about 3 hours of learning, reading, writing, and arithmetic, there were 3 C's of learning. And how can you bring this ancient 3 C's of learning into the internet age or into the digital age? And what are those 3 C's? We learned from the community. Community was a huge social governance mechanism. You lived in the neighborhood where everybody knew everybody. That's not the case today. Community was a big governance mechanism. How do you behave right or how do you behave wrong? Second one was congregation, faith. Before formal religions came in like Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism, or Western religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, 6 major religions, we actually had a governance by sort of a congregation. You got together on a belief system, whether it's a ancient worship, which is a pagan worship as it is called, but there was a faith-based learning of some sort which says this is right or wrong. And of course, the third one was craft. You learned under a master guild something to make it like a goldsmith, somebody who makes vessels, whatever it is. Apprenticeship program not only gave you the skill how to do it right, but values. Values in quality, values in taking pride in the work you do. All of them are very meaningful. So 3 C's of learning are becoming now more contemporary back again. And that's where the Jainism as a religion, with well-codified religion, becomes very appropriate because it's easy to see the codification of the knowledge, how it can be actually implemented on a daily basis through mindfulness. Third one is very important area. By the way, the second one I do want to mention, as we increase the diversity all over the world, America is becoming very diverse. Every culture from the world is coming here, is settling here. So we have a crisis of values. Whose faith do we agree on? Is values, ethics are going to come from faith themselves, or will that be secular ethics? There's a debate going on right now whether who says religion is the only place where we can get values, can we get values, code of conduct by other mechanisms, the academic debates are going on. So there's a crisis of whose values should we believe, which is where one of the key principles of Jainism, Anekantavad, becomes very relevant, as I will talk about in a moment. And there's a huge influence of social media. For example, TikTok is the best example recently, but so has been the case for Facebook or WhatsApp. Instagram is very popular, and they are shaping our minds more so than our faith or our family or our community, for example. And that's creating enormous side effects or consequences that we need to understand, be mindful about those consequences, and try to see how we can avoid it, or how we can prevent it, or how we can minimize it at least. Searching, third major area is we are all searching for meaning in life. The amount of loneliness among young people, and I've seen similarly with senior citizens, is mind-boggling. People don't have an anchor in life. They're doing things, but they have no meaning. And in business, it is even more. If you make money without meaning, it's meaningless. The more money you make without some purpose in life, the more empty you feel inside. People like us as academic professors, we become coaches and advisors to chairmen of large companies. In private conversations, you can see that loneliness. And if you do not give back to the community, which is one of the key principles of Jainism, giving back constantly while you're earning, not when you retire, if you don't give it back, the society shuts you out also. Society, I will isolate that he's a taker, he's an exploiter of all the resources that the community provides, the nature provides, but not contributing back toward its regeneration, or basically, contributing back to survive or grow the ecology, for example, or the community, for example. There's a huge rise in global mental health. In fact, most of the violence is arising primarily because of the violence because of the mental health, and looking for purpose-driven life. Surprisingly, Christianity has also talked about purpose-driven life. Rick Warren is a great writer, and he has a book that is probably 50 million copies or so. So every faith is trying to provide a meaning, but Jainism seems to have a direct linkage, but purpose-driven life that I will articulate. So let's go to the next slide, please. My voice is breaking up is what I got as a message. Is that true?
No, it is fine, sir.
It is fine here as well.
Okay. So sustainability, probably the biggest single area of focus worldwide is now sustainability. As you said, we see the evidence of hurricanes becoming more violent, heat waves becoming more. That's fascinating. So one of the first principles Jainism teaches is that all forms of life are equal. And therefore you cannot harm all forms of life, no harm to any living forms of life, but we extend that notion beyond humans. We say all forms of life means marine life, all forms of life means animal life, but also plants. I think no other religion has gone to that extent of having the principle of ahimsa, or absolute non-violence, as I call it, across so many things. So we are trained in the family not to kill insects. Can we take the insects out, whether it's a mosquito or fly, or a serpent, or a cockroach, rather than kill it, which is a typical instinct, and humans are so powerful one can do it, but instead saying that they have a life of their own. There's a jiv or a soul in every living organism. Can we put it out into the nature? Let nature do what it does in terms of harmonious coexistence, etc. Very important principle. Now this creates crisis in our family. When my son was 4 years old, now he's 56 years old, came running to my house, Madhu, my wife, and I talked to him. He said, in my school, the school teacher squatted the fly and killed the fly. And he said, I screamed. I said, you are not supposed to kill any living beings. This is the contemporary life in conflict with belief system. The teacher said, it's okay, you're only 4 years old. He was trying to console the child. my son, to say, it's okay. It's very interesting. So these are the kinds of things that we need to broaden our knowledge through our religion, to say that there is a possibility of changing people's lives or thinking, which may be more based upon other cultures and socialization processes. But there is something new here that one can do, which is happening about vegan and vegetarianism, which I will talk in a moment. So ahimsa is a very key anchor. Not only it was used by Mahatma Gandhi for social activism, like Freedom March in India or in South Africa. Mandela did the same thing in South Africa, a peaceful, passive resistance, which is key concept of nature in general. Nature is a living, breathing. If you abuse it, starts non-cooperation. Rather than cooperate with you or collaborate with you, it simply shuts down. As we are finding right now, bee production is shut down, for example. Bees are not just cooperating anymore, which is very fascinating to watch as a lead indicator about the environmental issues. So ahimsa becomes a very key principle, but it is used everywhere. We have funded Ahimsa Center at University of California. The center actually teaches teachers for high school education, come for a 6-8 months paid by the government, National Science Foundation grant, and teaches them how to teach in the classroom to remain non-violent. So it's all kinds of experiments that are going on using our tenets. Second key area, as I mentioned, mindfulness, mindful consumption. So we are basically strongly suggesting that a vegetarian plant-based diet is as good as meat-based diet. In fact, I did research in the 70s on what is called as low-cost, high-protein foods, and one of the best protein strains I found was chickpeas. Fish is another one that comes about in some cultures, but chickpeas was very fascinating. It produces protein on less acreage of land than what a cow will produce, which is what the Western thinking about eating beef, for example. And we have rules, regulations, even in Hinduism, not just Jainism, about not eating beef, for example. It's a much more a costly way of generating protein. We need protein in the body, but it comes from plant and vegetation. And it is fortunately becoming more and more popular in the Western world, but more importantly, more and more a necessity. So plant-based diet, ultimately vegan diet, which means there is no saturated fat coming from animal, only from plant-based. And it's very, I've done a lot of research on this again. So if you take cheese as a saturated fat coming from dairy products, Northern European cheese fat content is about 40%, Swiss cheese and others. I go to the Mediterranean area, cheese concept is still there, but it's the mozzarella, Parmesan, etc., feta cheese, Greek and Italy would be the prime examples. That fat content is 2.5%. And you go further toward equator, the concept of cheese drops from all cultures. It is taken over by olive oil, palm oil, coconut oil, and in Mexico by avocado. So in India, Northern Indians, Delhi area, paneer is a daily diet. South India has no concept of paneer at all. Think about it. So there's a very nice organized system produced there. More and more you are toward the tropical areas, more will be plant-based diet generally. Meat or poultry will be less and less. Very interesting area. So there's a lot of practical reality of tenets of Jainism. So vegetarian and vegetable diet for personal reasons, personal health, societal reasons, in terms of impact on the community in which you live, and of course the plant. We have invented, or we have in our religion, the concept of fasting. Paryushan is starting for my part of the Jainism branch. I think we are starting next week on September 12th. Our Paryushan begins for 7-8 days, and we will have about 50 very young people fasting for 7, 8, 9, 10 days. Some fast for 2 weeks, for example. Fasting is detoxification. And intermittent fasting, which traditional Jains do, not eating after sunset and not eating before sunrise or a couple of hours before sunrise, there's a physical, biological meaning. It's basically detoxification. Whereas in the Western world, with convenience, we are snacking all the time. So many of the principles of Ayurveda medicine are built into our religion also. Intermittent fasting is becoming now almost a fad and a fashion. There are clinics out there where people go to learn how to do intermittent fasting, which we did as a daily necessity. Next slide, please. So how do you have nature generate itself back again, which I think is very possible. And that is including mindful materialism, which is the third principle. So mindful consumption is first. Respect for all forms of life is another one, which is ahimsa. But the third one is mindful materialism, which is aparigraha. The main point around here is very simple.
Bye.
The more you possess, more you have ownership, more you'll have issues about ownership themselves. It will create burden on your mind. You will worry about, say, theft, for example. So more and more young people are learning we need to own things. Sharing economy is a big, big initiative. Why not just share the economy so long as it is not environmentally damaging? So limited possession of material goods, including homes, garments, clothing, and grains or food. Aparigraha is a very key concept, which means basically putting a value by saying have limited possessions, but anything excess you have, give it back to the society. We are a steward of the nature, steward of the society, steward of the community. How do we give it back? And the last concept is the key one. I think this is the only religion that does not believe in superiority of humans, Homo sapiens over everybody else. All souls are equal. And one can be reborn into a soul that is something which is not the human nature, but some other animal or vegetation or whatever it is. I think equality or egalitarianism of soul is a very fundamental principle which creates respect for life. And as Homo sapiens, our main differentiation is that we have a cognitive capacity. We are thinking. We can have thoughts. We can have a language. We are speaking. We can influence others. We can actually nurture nature if you wanted to. And Jainism has ways to show you how to do it. So these four things are very important in our daily life for sustainability. So let's go to the next area, which is disintegration of society. The more we have the diversity, cultural diversity, faith diversity, lifestyle diversity, and as we have more diversity, so the average doesn't matter anymore, it's the range or the variance, as we call it, statistics that matters. Acceptance of diversity of views and values is very key as a way of managing harmony. Peaceful coexistence, whatever word you would like, and that is unaccountable. That there is a truth out there, it is not the truth we are talking about, it's the perspective or my perception about the truth. And of course, perceptions vary by our ideology. So if I'm one political party, I can see the world of economic growth or not growth in a one way. If I'm a different ideology, I see it very differently. We always have the debate between capitalism perspective versus a communist perspective versus socialistic perspective, for example. But this is true in daily life. And of course, the typical fable that we use all the time to make this very obvious is the 5 blind men and the elephant. The blind man who touches actually the tail thinks it's a snake. Blind man who touches the trunk, for example, has a different meaning. Those who touch the feet, they think it's a tree. Just goes on and on. It's all fable we learn at youngsters pretty much. But it says that reality is not what you perceive. So you're right, your perspective is as right as my perspective. There is no right or wrong. So in my class, I teach my students. Right now, I have a class of 58 students, and I basically say, in my class, there is no right or wrong answer. But once you decide, I am right and you are wrong, you have no harmonious relationship. And this is unfortunately what happens with social media, with politics, etc. How do we counterbalance counterbalancing is clearly the principle of Anekantwad, everybody's right, which also breaks down the logic and underlying mathematics of true and false. So the concept of true and false is questioned by the religion, which becomes so meaningful in scientific inquiry. Because most of the science is based on mathematics, which is based upon only two principles. Logic is a very key component. Logic is true or false. Binary data is binary data, but today this religion says it's more than that. So I find it very fascinating, linking Anekantwad to multiple perspectives and tolerance for each other perspectives, no matter what faith or lifestyle you belong to. Unity in diversity through solving societal and community problems. We have always believed that community is very important. And what can we do together, no matter what faith we belong to, or what lifestyles we belong to, what family upbringing we belong to? How can we get together for something higher than our daily life? Which is why community service is a very key component as volunteers. We need to contribute back, find a cause that rises above our own ideologies and differences. So societal and community problems is becoming very mainstream. In the US, in high school, for example, last 3 years, you have to do community service. If you want to get into a top university, your grades are not enough. At the university in Bangalore, which is named after me, Jagdish Sheth School of Management, for MBA programs or PGP, the first term itself, students are broken into teams and they go and look into very poor neighborhoods, almost slum areas, identify a problem that the community is struggling, take on the challenge of identifying the problem and solving the problem before the term is over, at least making recommendations. You begin to feel a sense of belonging yourself. You get a meaning in life to say, I'm doing something other than just make money or a career. And neighborhood involvement is very key. And how do we serve the community? By 3 ways. Give our time, give our expertise or talent, and give our money, depending upon what is possible, or all three that's possible. So this is the way Jainism tells us how to have back again respect for institutions and societal governance. Last area, searching for meaning in life, which is, I think, the main focus of your series here. Searching for meaning. This is very simple. This is the only religion that says, search for meaning within. Search for personal growth within. Search for removing all of the things that come to as what I call difficulties in life. Suffering is a key word that's used in many of the other parts of the religion. Self-awareness, as I mentioned, mindfulness is a key concept. Conquering self-destructive habits. And we have identified 4 or 5 habits, but the 3 are very key. Anger is a very key. Anger is self-destructive. It doesn't impact the other person, it impacts you. If you are a boss, if you are angry, it hurts you more than somebody else. In a family, if you are angry, it is more taking your impact on your biology, not only psychology, not the recipient of the anger. It's the giver of the anger. Ego, of course, we always talk about it. If you have ego, then you will stop learning from anybody else. And in the process, you will be becoming less competent, actually. And the last one is possessions. Aparigraha that we talked about. So self-awareness. And as I mentioned here, I am the one who destroys me. Outside world doesn't destroy you. You destroy yourself. We have self-destructive habits. Whether it's gambling on the one hand, some people have, drinking on the other hand, some people may have, or whatever habits you have. Even small habits, repetition of the same behavior again and again forms a habit. And because of that, you begin to get habituated or addicted for that matter. So the religion here talks about how to minimize that. Self-learning, which is the next area. We are constantly good learners. Homo sapiens has the capacity to learn, has the capacity to increase the knowledge, and self-learning, as opposed to learning, as I said, when the student is ready, the teacher will show off. So self-learning can happen through experiential learning, which is know-how, cognitive learning, theories, frameworks, know why, but meditation and contemplation are built into, say, here is a ritual or a way to set aside time for self-learning, self-reflection. And the last one is self-enlightenment, which is why we believe a Tirthankar is a good model. They are all human beings, but they use their cognitive capacity, began to think internally quite a lot through meditation and enhance that knowledge to a level that is exceptional. And they conquer all of the sufferings and all of the bad habits that one would have otherwise. And they come out with a purpose-driven life. There is no upper limit of self-realization. In fact, in my classes, I studied and I teach Maslow's need hierarchy. Safety, survival need, then self-esteem, love and affection need, then self-esteem and independence, and ultimately self-actualization. It all comes from the Hinduism, Jainism, religious tenets. This comes from Jainism quite a lot. So basically, as Tirthankara, you can conquer. You have the willpower, you have the determination, as we showed during fasting, that I can actually conquer my body for 7-8 days, nothing whatsoever to eat, etc. I think it's very interesting. Willpower is a very key concept, which is mindfulness again. So Jina, the victor, is a key principle. Purpose-driven life is very important in self-enlightenment. I tell you why this is so important today. More for professional career, not just for personal life. Half-life of knowledge is getting shorter and shorter. In the technology world, it is 18 months and declining. I studied Fortran language way back when, or BASIC, which was a complex language. But today you have a C++ is gone, R is gone now. It's good, it looks like. You have the generative AI, artificial intelligence, you have the chat box, you have the chat GPT coming in. It's very fascinating. Management knowledge the same way. Half-life of management knowledge is so declining. By the time an MBA graduates in 2 years, half the knowledge is not there. I never heard of chat GPT till about 6 months ago. I knew about 2 years ago, the accounting people use it, the underlying cryptocurrency, underlying technology. I'm right now learning, for example, quantum computing, which is the next wave arising. I have no idea. And I've been teaching 60 years. So I have a very obsolete knowledge. If I continue not learning, I'll be remaining behind. I'll be ignorant, actually. The religion motivates you, forces you to constantly learn new things. The more you have the obsession to learn, the longer the life, the happier the life, which is very key. So let me summarize and then open up for Q&A. Next page, please. So Jainism is the most contemporary ancient religion. These contradictions are always important. It's contemporary, but it is ancient at the same time. The 3 tenets of Jainism, non-violence, non-possession, and tolerance for diversity are anchored to both clinical and scientific understanding. Many of the scientific inquiries are going back to like the cell structure in plants, for example, the way we put the mumti or the clothing in front of the mouth for bacteria and virus transfer, which we learned quite a lot through the pandemic, for example. It's the same thing. People are going back to ancient wisdom. And Jainism has more than most of the religions from a practical living, day-to-day coexistence with nature, coexistence with community, etc. And it gives you norms or guidelines to say what you should and should not do, pretty much. So it's very scientific, which I find amazing, because I'm more trained as a scientist. Very, very sort of skeptical about anything that's ritualistic things. But rituals have reason and meaning why they are there in place by any faith, whatever faith you belong to. So scientific understanding of ecology, sociology, and psychology, 3 disciplines are involved. It's very holistic religion in the process. Next page, please. Respect for all living organisms and mindful consumption and mindful possessions are key to sustainability. Tolerance of alternative perspectives and community engagement. Second part we don't do as well. I think as Jains, we need to engage in community other than religious activities are key to social governance or social harmony. Self-awareness, self-learning, and self-enlightenment are key to realizing individual potential. Thank you so much. I'll open for questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm totally short of words to really how you really laid out the principles of Jainism for the modern world, right? The AAA. I think you talk about in your marketing the rule of three. So you talked about rule of three here, very relevant for all of us. I think before I open it up, I wanted to invite Jaswal Uncle. Jaswal Uncle is our mentor and deep knowledge, and he has been the guiding mentor for us. Uncle, if you would like to add anything, any comment, over to you, Uncle. Uncle, you're on mute. We can't hear you, Uncle. I think you're on mute. Oh, sorry. I need to change. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, now you.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
My absolute admiration for the presentation of Dr. Sheth. It was mind-boggling, to say the least. The way he put things, in contemporary terms, the basic tenets of Jainism were, made so easy to understand for people who are used to the terminology of today. And he hit the nail on the head when he said, when he reduced the tenets of Jainism to three basic principles. It's really amazing the way he he condensed all this immense wisdom in a short talk of some 40-45 minutes. It's really amazing. And there's only one thing that I would like to supplement, if I may.
Yes.
The eco-friendliness of Jainism can also be ascribed to the primacy of the concept of ahimsa, because the respect of life, the tenet of respect of life, all forms of life, is the essence. When we see life in things like Prithvi, in things like fire, in things like water. Water is teeming with life, and life forms that we can recognize. An ordinary person can recognize. There are fish, there is plankton, there is, all kinds of mammals in water, but we don't mean that. We say that they are life forms which are indistinguishable from water. Jal Kayak Jeev. Similarly, Agni Kayak Jeev, Prithvi Kayak. So they are indistinguishable from Earth. They are Earth themselves. So we attribute life to these elements per se.
Yeah.
I mean, they are not just bearers of life, they are living things. So that is why, and when we say that we respect all the six forms of life, so five of these are these ekindriya jeevs, and all the ras jeevs, all the other organisms, which include human beings, they come in one category. But the five main categories, 5 out of 6 categories, are these things which are not considered animate in science.
Yeah, right.
We are the most eco-friendly religion because of this, because we consider the earth to be a living thing, we consider fire or energy to be a living thing, we consider air to be a living thing. That is why we respect them all, and that's why we do not use them when we don't have to use them, because we have to live and we have to use all these things. But then we use with utmost moderation. That is, I think, very critical to the understanding of the relevance of Jainism in today's world.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
there are other things which Dr. Sheth articulated so coherently and so cogently. I need not expound on them. I mean, it will be a waste of time. And I don't think I'll be able to match his eloquence or his articulation. So it's really remarkable, and we are all grateful that you could share your boundless wisdom with us in this session. Thank you very much.
But I think the main point you made is so important, that one cell living organisms, this is the only religion that recognizes and makes it equal to two cell, etc. I think that's very key, because you're right, fire has its own living. It's not like somebody in fire or somebody in water. I think that's very key, and you're so right. We are learning so much now by treating that one cell organisms and understanding science, especially in the marine life, way down in the deep waters. They're finding many of these one cell entities, which are ultimately the foundation of living organisms. It's a feeding cycle in some fashion. So thank you for adding that. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jaswalangal. I think there are a number of questions on the chat. Maybe I'll pick one by one. But before that, in your life personal journey, sir, were there moments where you had a
Yes.
dilemma or a conflict, and how did you use these principles, as we say that spirituality and success is not their companion, or they really supplement each other rather than conflict? But did you come across from, so if you can just share your practical experience on that?
Sure, there are several. First time I came to America in Pittsburgh in 1961, I met another Jain. Last name also was Sheth, although he changed to SCTH. And I met him on the street and he chatted, and we are both Gujarati. And he said, yeah, come on, let's have pizza. So we went to a pizza place and I saw this meat-like stuff, white, and I said, this is meat, I cannot touch it. He tried to convince me it is not meat, it is vegetarian. I refused to eat altogether till I felt comfortable that it is genuine. So I did not eat it. And he was still amazed. He says, you are in America, pizza is a common food for Indians. So that was one thing. I did a massive research for Indian government through IIM Calcutta on machine tool industry export market, 1968. One of the major distributors in Coventry, Alfred Marshall or some such name, they treated me like a royalty. I stayed in the guest house. And then they served me a fish as a dish. Because many of these cultures, fish is vegetarian in their mind. I had no idea. And I was stunned. I said, I cannot eat. And they got offended because it's a typical, very ancient home. The husband, wife are home, take care. It's like a royalty almost treatment. And they felt like, but I again said, I'm sorry, I come to a religion where we do not eat fish also. We don't even have eggs, for example, etc. But ultimately, my belief system prevailed. But nice thing was that they were tolerant. They said, we understand. Otherwise, if you go to many other countries of the world, especially in Western Europe, you have to become like them rather than accept you who you are. And that's one thing more nice thing about US is that they begin to say, okay, if that's your belief system, it's okay to practice it if you wanted to. We have been very blessed also, by the way. We have told our children when they were growing up that you can be a vegetarian, you can be non-vegetarian if you want to by choice, but we will never have meat in our family. And they all are vegetarian. Our grandchildren are vegetarian. They're all grown up now into their 20s. And they go on the campus. They learn how to cook themselves. Pasta is a very common thing they know how to do, etc. So they learn how to cook or go to the cafeteria, etc. It's not easy. Fortunately, today, things are available from Indian stores and restaurants, our cuisines, etc. But I think you have to stand for your belief system. What this religion does is to say that if you have a belief system, a character, you can overcome it. That the inner strength is very important in terms of not bending to some other people's pressures of do things that you know are self-destructive, essentially.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think just a follow-up question, and also open up for other people also to unmute themselves. But just a follow-up, I think generally people relate Jainism equal to not eating in the night or not eating fish or so. But we do not talk about a parigraha or anikantvad or other tenets. I think eating is one part, and of course that's the beginning maybe. So often a lot of things are, people take it with a lot of pride that, hey, I don't eat. But they may as well indulge in mindless consumption. right?
Yeah.
And really in the process and contributing to Hinsa.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's why I think probably the lecture like yours is really going to really reinforce us to really talk more about in a holistic way and a relevant way. Because otherwise, when we talk about eating, we also often maybe alienate others, right? In terms of, and we become like a separate rather than we can really talk about even other aspects of the religion, right? Anekantvad, aparigraha, etc. Yeah.
I think those two are equally important, especially aparigraha, which means we as Jain community, if you look at it worldwide, always have given back, establishing institutions, educational institutions. In India, I'm told there are 1,500 educational institutions, schools and colleges, all by the Jain families.
Yeah.
I think giving back, and when many of the Jains have foundations of their own, contributing back to the society. And again, that Anekantvad is very key principle. They were saying, all right, doesn't matter what faith or belief system you belong to, if you're a part of the community, how can we help you?
Sure.
So taking, I think those are the things. But I do agree, we overemphasize the eating side and the ahimsa as a principle, which is fine, but I think we need to equally emphasize aparigraha and Anekantvad. Anekantvad is very important in teaching. Because you have a class of people, like in my class right now, I have probably 10 or 11 foreign exchange students. They have come from about 10 countries, France, Germany, Spain, it just goes on. They all come with different backgrounds. In the class, you cannot say my way is the only way or the right way. You have to say, we have to have tolerance for other perspectives, in which case the total dialogue goes much better.
Yeah, excellent. Let me ask to unmute people. I think there are many people have put questions on the chat. Let me also ask maybe Swati to unmute herself first. She has been the leading force of Jainin right from beginning. So over to you, Swati. Unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. It was a great session, sir. Very, very enlightening. So I have a question. I have been a deep admirer of your and Madhuji's philanthropy and charity. So would really want to know a little more about your inspiration behind it and your journey, so that it can inspire us as well to do things at the right time and not when we are retired.
It comes from two sources. Foundation is a belief system, Jainism in my case, and Madhuji is also Jain. But also when you become a refugee and you survive, you go through hardship. If you survive, it builds an inner character, not by faith, but by just circumstances. In my case, it's both, fortunately. And then you begin to think about how blessed you are. And I come from a merchant community. My father family owned a shop in a small town in Kutch. And when we came back, I probably would, we in business community, education is not as important as running the family business. We would have run a little panwala shop. But circumstances made us move away from Kutch, where I come from, near Mundra, a small village. And that allowed me the mobility, learn English some other place. And you begin to say, how can you become a professor when you come from a community that does not invest in education? That's typical merchant community. And you begin to think about how much human potential you have. And I've always used an analog, but it's again tied to Jainism. If you take a grain of wheat and make it into a loaf of bread, an agricultural commodity, the value add is only 3 times. If you take a rough diamond and polish it, a good diamond cutter will increase the value to 15 to 20 times. Value of the rough diamond versus the finished diamond. But if you take a human being, mentor, educate, polish, the value add is infinite. And you do self-reflection. And that's what the difference is. So it becomes natural to give back. That there are people like you who are as good as anybody else, human potential, And it's your obligation almost to give back. Interesting. That drives both of us.
So did you follow, like in Jains, it is said that you should give this proportion of charity. Did you follow that in your life?
No, except the desire is that what you should give to the family, children is good values and good education. Beyond that one, you have no material obligation to your children. Although everything you possess belongs to the community, whatever community you define. And so the goal basically is that so long as you are not a burden on your children in old age, you have economic well-being, the rest of it doesn't belong to you, which again is a principle of Aparida. Now, I may be doing Swati opposite. I may be doing things and rationalizing with our belief system, okay? It could be possible, but it's reinforcing at least what I'm doing. I feel Jainism has given me the meaning about why am I doing it, what I'm doing it. So either way, it makes no difference.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
I just want to add that during, it was so fascinating to hear that in Atlanta, during Paryushan and Daslakshan, Jain food is served in all the hostels, right? And so, of course, the students and the kids were elevated because of getting food and to really be able to really have a sattvic food during those days. So such a sattvic food served at the doorstep of the hostel, that is it was so heart touching to know that. So thank you so much, sir. Just I think
And
Rakesh,
I just wanted to add one more thing, that why I said the statement that I am very inspired by Professor Sheth and ma'am's philanthropy, because when I went to the Atlanta temple, it's a beautiful temple. I would say it was one of the best temples in the United States, and that I learned from others, and Professor Sheth may correct that, but that the land was donated by Professor Sheth. So that was heartening to know, and that is where our kids, so many kids go to Atlanta to study, Jain kids. My own son is studying, and they are blessed to go to a Jain temple there. So thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Swati. One correction, it is both Madhuji, my wife, and me together.
so just I think Rakesh Bohraji asked if you can unmute. Rakeshji, you can ask your question.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. It was really good listening to you. I am Rakesh. So I am also trying to be a student of Jainism and doing a bit of research on Anikantvad and business management. So one of the things which I'm trying to answer is, while we practice Anikantvad to understand the underlying reality for any business decisions or things which we take, end of the day, we have to take a decision, and the decision will not be to the liking of all stakeholders. So how do we explain to the aggrieved stakeholders? Because a decision has to be taken.
Yeah, it's very, very obvious when we think back. I think so long as you respect their perspective, in a group meeting, for example, and I'll give you some key examples in the R&D area where I do a lot of work with companies, research, fundamental things. People coming from different backgrounds, and I'll just use Western example, a Russian tradition of science and engineering, a German tradition of science and engineering, an American tradition, the British tradition are very different. So when you want to build a new device or new appliance or new something, multiple perspectives are very valuable. You don't have to accept every one of them, but you may get, they're like ingredients. And your job as a leader of the team, like Bell Labs, for example, where I've been advisor for many years, General Motors Tech Center, where we imagine the future of transportation, those ideas become very valuable. So long as you acknowledge that your idea is as good as anybody, even though you do not accept it at the end. To me, it's the process of being a good mentor or a team leader. To me, the same thing goes in every aspect of business. Whether you run a department in academic world, a deanship, for example. Multiple views should be accepted, tolerated, listened to properly, rather than ignored to say, I'm right. And I'll give you a live example. I was involved with Whirlpool Corporation as an advisor to expand globally. We bought out Philips in Europe, but I told the chairman the next battleground will be emerging economies. So we came to India at TVS, was our anchor, our partner. This is the time where India had no monetary license, balance of payment. So we could not get paid in cash or anything. So I said, look, in India, the talent is with people. Can we ask for 100 years of engineering talent and bring them to Benton Harbor, Michigan, which is the headquarters? Most of their engineers are Purdue University trained in mechanical or industrial engineering, which is world class, number one. They were blown away because in Indian scientists had learned how to create a washer with power interruption, because in India, power interruption is common. How to make a washer with small amount of water. The water is scarce in India. So we have scarcity-driven innovation, which Indian engineers knew reality-wise. And suddenly, people were skeptical. Indian can be even engineers, kind of a notion. So this was a time when India was country of roaming cow and snake charmers. You see, in the minds of the people. They were blown away and became darling of the R&D group, primarily all well-trained, brilliant scientists. I've seen this in Bell Labs. I've seen this at General Motors Technology. I'm seeing it all over. And of course, Chandrayaan 3 that we did, landing on the south pole of moon, people are amazed. We didn't think about it. So to me, I think that is very key, that so long as you listen to alternative perspectives, show your tolerance and appreciation, maybe learn from one of them, come out with a fusion if possible. All of this can happen. Actually, it does happen in the real world. Account management on the other side, sales side, a large complex account, and I'll go personal. This coming Tuesday, I'm inviting a very senior executive who is in charge of a global key account management supply chain. And right now, the huge problem of supply chain, so we are inviting to say, how do you manage it? He has to learn from customer teams all over the world. I mean, there are like 150 countries involved where this customer is involved. I'm not giving the name of the company and the customer intentionally. But it's very fascinating. And again, when you look at a successful executive, the key competency is listening. Most bosses don't have listening skill. So listening becomes very key, which is again anekantwad. I listen to your perspective. So ultimately goes back to, as Vishal said, we need to overemphasize anekantwad in our discussion to our children and to our colleagues, and also, in fact, aparigraha.
Sir, on the lighter note, like in India, we are having the G20 summit, and today the one thing which was not expected, there has been a consensus on the declaration. Is it a product of Anikantwad?
The diplomatic place is the best place to learn about Anikantwad, actually, all over the world. Because you bring in people with animosity on the one hand. So the mediator, a nation that says, I will be the mediator between two conflicting views. And I'll give you some practical examples. We brought in at Carter Center, President Carter has a center, which is affiliated with Emory University. The Mandela, Desmond Tutu, there was a conflict. Yeah. For reconciliation. It took a year and a half of negotiating behind the scenes, bringing two parties together. Because that animosity had grown so far that each party wanted to do harm to the other one, essentially. Party meaning groups of people. It's a very beautiful story about how the mediator has to have a skill of listening both sides, coming out with possibilities, which is face-saving on the one hand. Just now it happened with Biden administration. I think in Camp David is the place they use, isolated place, where they brought the Japanese and the Koreans together. Because both are remembering the history during World War II or before World War II with Japanese aggression in Korea, occupation of Korea, as they did in China. So people have not forgotten that. And how do you overcome that, and how do you communicate to both of them that there's a common problem arising in Asia, especially the rise of China and the military ambitions of China, and you need to have defense, which means cooperation is more important than animosity. I think that again, so it's very much, I think the best place I see is more in diplomatic work. And the only other place I've seen is when you put together customer teams and the supplier teams together, like 30 people on each side, when they get together, like Procter & Gamble and Walmart. Walmart is a customer, P&G is a manufacturer. The teams, they all have different perspectives. And ultimately they work together. So I think that's very interesting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe I can, sir, is it okay for another 5 minutes or so? We will maybe add another question or so, and then we will wrap up. And I think others probably we will try to answer over the chat or so, and probably get your perspective. Maybe Surbhi ji raised her hand some time back. Surbhi ji, if you can ask your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir, for this very, very insightful session, and having read your papers and having seen you in conferences and then to interact at this forum. I think I'm feeling very, very privileged and really honored to be interacting with you. Sir, I'm a PhD scholar in CB area, and I'm on the verge of completing my thesis. One of our papers got recently published in a good journal where we are talking about how people find meaning in life through consumption. The second chapter is on anti-consumption, or mindful consumption rather, and I was inspired greatly by your paper. And taking the practice of Upadhan in Jainism as a context, we are trying to study how not consuming also helps people find meaning in life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you are aware of this practice wherein people follow ascetic lives for a stipulated period of 15 or 20 days. Before and after the practice, they are part of the normal consumer culture.
Yeah.
So we send it to ANSMAC also. It is accepted in doctoral colloquium. And but I don't know how to position it in CB literature, sir, and which journals to target. And I'm sorry, I think I'm taking away this group's time. I just thought it was a good platform to reach out to you. So there's a lot of selfishness there.
I think the making connection explicitly to Jainism principles will not work very well. In scientific journals, they try to avoid anything that has to do with faith-based knowledge. Unless it's a practice, that's different, but an explanation is very difficult because they believe we have to be neutral, scientific, etc. Although each faith has, Jewish faith has its own do's and don'ts in consumption, so does the Islam faith, so does in fact Christianity. Catholics have certain procedures about what not to consume, like Friday don't consume meat, for example. Again, health related, fish is the consumption, or whatever turns out to be. But I think unless you link it in a proper way, the paper may not be accepted. I think it cannot be read as a propaganda. In fact, I'm sorry, Vishal, we are going into our academic life here, which is very difficult. But Atul Parvatyar, who is a great colleague of mine, we have a paper that is out, will be coming out, where we use theory of dharma and karma, for example, with those words into a scientific literature. About a decade ago would have been never accepted. But today, for whatever reason, India is in the center of attention of everybody. People are more interested in learning about Indian wisdom, Indian rituals, Indian traditions. I'm talking about non-Indians primarily. And so the paper got accepted through peer review, fortunately. So we are trying to connect to the ancient wisdom in India, not necessarily Jainism per se, but ancient wisdom, and it is becoming a little more acceptable, but still science is science, which is why I use the word. Jainism is founded both on clinical, which is observational discovery approach, but also scientific hypothesis testing approach, both ways. Knowledge is, the more I study, the more I'm getting my appetite whet. Madhu, my wife, is telling me, give up everything and just study Jainism for the life that you have, which is fine. It's exciting because we are, as scholars, we are always curious about newer things in life.
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry digress.
Follow, sir. Thank you.
Thank
No,
you.
I think we with this, we'll just
Dr. Vishal.
Vipulji, sorry, Professor Sudhir Jain, if probably just last quick question over to you, and then we'll just wrap up with a thank you note.
Okay. Professor Sheth, it was always, it is delight to hear to you and listen to you, and same this time, and this time on a different topic than in the past. So I'm feeling very nice about it. And I had a question, how we can, create some kind of a book which can be a must keep in everybody's house. Every Jain must have a book like Gita or Ramayana or Quran or Bible. We should have a book which should be in everybody's house. When you say you are a Jain, it should be there. So what we can do about it? Your words of wisdom would be useful. I am at this stage in my life. I want to give more and more to the society, and I would like to contribute in this in whatever manner it is possible. Over to you, sir.
No, I think the more we go digital, the more we need physical. Well, a lot of knowledge is there. There are several websites. Jain World is a big one out of Atlanta. Jaina as a federation has its own knowledge, which is quite a lot. But there's nothing like a tangible book. There's a very interesting documentary made by one of my family members or friends, Wisdom Tree, where he talks to all the quantum physics professors, world class, Nobel Prize winners. And they were all surprised. He was surprised in his documentary that many of them had Bhagavad Gita under their bed. At night, they're sleepless. They're worrying about something new in their mind. They're obsessed, like a painter would be, or a musician would be. And they ultimately go back and find something in that. So having a physical product is always very important in proximity, time and place. How it can be done, there are several successful models. For example, Bible has done a great job of propagating with a printer coming out, printing when it came out, Gutenberg, for example, and Bible became the largest physical print copy. I think we have to take a similar view and say, how can we create that? Fortunately, our population is not that large, relatively speaking, maybe 10 million at best. And one can easily provide that as a contribution somehow. And I'm sorry to belabor the point, but we do something non-Jain, which is very interesting. There was an American guy who actually came and wrote a book about India Unveiled, talking about great photography about Madurai temple, for example, Jain traditions, for example. I mean, just incredible culture, art, everything. And we distribute that, we fund it primarily through my family foundation. In each state, for all public libraries of high school, middle school, one copy. They do all the distribution, etc. Then I told them, look, every community has well-to-do families of Indian origin, not necessarily Jains, motivate them to matchmaking. And we are now into like 12 states easily. Okay? So we have mechanisms like that one can create. But as Vishal will tell you, as you know, of course, anything you do, what you need is a strong volunteer leader who is passionate about taking this as a specific activity. Then only it will work. But it's doable, very doable. Fortunately,
in fact, there are hundreds of associations. There are hundreds of associations, maybe thousands. And there is no such way to come together and do something like this.
I'm sorry. Yeah, please add. Yeah, go ahead.
This has been done. This task was assigned to the leaders of all the different sects and denominations in Jainism, and it was at the instance of a non-Jain, Acharya Vinoba Bhave, took this initiative because of the internecine conflicts amongst different sects of Jainism, which pained him enormously because he was really devoted to the tenets of Jainism, although he was a non-Jain. So in on the occasion of this 2600th anniversary of Bhagwan Mahavir, which was celebrated in 1973, this task was assigned to 4 leaders of 4 main denominations of Jainism. And they all came together, and then they selected Jinendra Varniji to do this compilation, to prepare an anthology of the basic principles extracted from all the canons of different sects, which ought to be acceptable to all the 4 main sects. So this task was accomplished after a labor of love, and it is called Saman Suttam. It is so unfortunate that most people do not know about it. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it is a work which is available, which has been commented upon. It needs to be popularized. So the kind of evangelical work that has been done in other contexts should be undertaken now. So Saman Suttam, maybe you should need more commentaries on Saman Suttam, make them relatable to different interests. And it is a compilation of 756 gathas organized in 7 chapters of 108 gathas each. And it is something which one should have on one's bedside table.
Where is it available?
It is available. It is available. I have got several editions of.
And maybe I think in one of the Jainin sessions we should touch upon some of this.
And please read about it.
Yeah.
I don't have to go very
So-
far.
So I think, Dr. Sheth, I think you need to leave. We wanted to give a formal thank you note. Vipulji is there, but you have 1 more minute, or we'll just wrap up. I know you have to go to the next one, right? But I think we'll let you go. I think we already took much more of your time. We'll further speak with you. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank Vipulji and Neerajji. Sorry.
This is Anil Shah. Can I say a few words?
Yes, please go
Sure.
ahead. And
Yes. These are just the comments. I don't have any question. I know Jagdish Bhai very well. Let me introduce myself. My name is Anil Shah. My son actually called me. I'm in Cincinnati. He said, Dad, join this thing. So I joined and I listened. And I told him I listened to Jagdish Bhai this lecture. But let me just tell you a few words about Jagdish Bhai. First, somebody asked a question about, what does he do for charity and everything. I tell you one thing, I've not met a guy. He believes in charity, period. He has a big Sheth Foundation. He and Madhuben Sheth, I work very closely with them, and they have been instrumental to have our temple at where we are today. Me, myself, Madhuben, Deepak Bhai, the other couple of members, we are expanding our temple from 16,000 square feet to 41,000. And Jagdish Bhai, Madhuben, I don't know, I'm short of words, but these 2 individuals I admire a lot, especially with Jagdish Bhai. I'm in a very, very close contact. He's one of the mentor. Anything you want to ask, he will give you. He understands Jainism practical way. He doesn't follow rituals. But when I listen to all this thing here, Jagdish Bhai, my hats off to you. I'm very, very happy you are 85, but just God give you few more years until 100. So when I retire, I want to say I met somebody, Jagdish Bhai said. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay,
you,
guys.
and thank you everyone for your joining. And I think we will be in touch through our regular channels. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Jai Jainin.
And thank you, Vipulji.